Have you ever given AI a clear instruction, a good one? You add a specific role, a solid context, and you even had a real task, like probably what I've explained in the previous classes, but it still goes off script. And I'm pretty sure that you've probably used this problem without even knowing what to call it. This is something I'm quite familiar with. When AI writes too much, it adds a conclusion that you didn't even ask for, or it uses a word you ate. It apologizes for something unprompted. Certainly, like like you're trying to give a speech, something very big. In this case, what do most people do? Most people, probably you do this. You add more instructions, you tell it to do this, you should do more of this, you should make sure to adjust this, or you should include this. The thing about it is that is a very wrong direction. Because the more you pile all those words, the more you tell it to do this, get better in this, it confuses the AI. The more you give to something like that, to these corrections, the more you allow the AI to just branch out to various other things that were not in line with what you were planning to do. And to fix this is not giving it more instruction, but is to give it more constraints. Is to give it better fences, as I will call it, to ensure that these things on this high rate, which right from the beginning, you are going to avoid a lot of things basically. So today I'm going to show you the most underrated technique I can say in this entire series on layer 1, which is negative constraints. And this is how to tell AI what not to do and why those boundaries gives you more control than even a positive instruction could. And in the next couple of minutes, I'm going to explain to you why you should not do this and why you telling AI don't do this is more powerful than you telling AI to do this, because it has more logic behind. I'm also going to give you, the 3 types of negative constraints, which every time you are using AI, you are doing something very serious with AI, you need to include it there. And also, as usual, I'm going to do a live demo where I will take a generic prompt, a very weak prompt, and I'll, transform the output completely using nothing but just restrictions. If you are new here, my name is Jude. You can call me Nirvana. For the last 4 years, I've been building AI systems for agencies and startups, including influencing businesses they work with and their clients as their AI marketing automation specialist. Now, this is day 9 of the 5 layers of AI series, and I promised that I was going to take you through from the foundation level to even building autonomous systems for 60 days. So in the next 60 days, you can consider yourself an expert in AI generally. So before I go on, tomorrow is going to be the last day, which will be day 10, and it's going to be the final layer 1 audit. So we'll finish layer 1 basically when on the 5th day. However, I've been adding a lot of things I do personally, things I use, processes I use to ensure that my prompt in layer 1 has more context, better context than just casual prompts out there. And after that, we're going to start layer 2, which will be on make.com, and we're going to start building real automations. But today we're going to finish this properly, because everything we don't lock down today is going to cause problems the moment we connect it to actual automations. So by the end of this video, you are going to have basically 3 parts constraint system that stops AI from just going about prompts and branching out, so that any prompt you write will stay clean, reliable, and consistent. And I believe that this kind of output is something you can always trust inside a system that runs even without you watching it. So let's get into this. So the real advantage, I can say, in 2026 is not how much you can make the AI say, how much you can make it not say. Anyone can make AI, produce more words. The machine can, produce as much words as it wants. And one thing I've noticed is that this AI is actually desperate to fill in a long page, because I mean, we've done examples where we give it casual prompt and it's going to give us something very long, and we did not ask for most of that. But the person who can make it produce only the right words and nothing else but the right words, that's the person with the actual skill. And where the skill lies are in constraints. You have to give AI constraints. Let me show you how this works at a level of pure logic, basically. If I tell you to go to the store, so you're going to the store, you might decide to drive the highway, or you might take a back road, or you might decide to even go through a field. Every way leads to the store. Basically, you can use any direction. And if I give you that instruction, I basically gave you almost no control, because you can decide to choose a longer road, which might take your time or it might take our time, and it won't have been effective. You won't have saved enough time to get there, and the energy it will also take to get there. In this case, when it comes to AI, I would say the tokens and the time you also spend while doing it too. But if I tell you something like this, go to the store, but don't pass the highway, or don't go through the field, or never stop at any other business, or don't talk to anyone on the way. Now, what I just did is that I just gave you some constraints. I've removed some parts. I've told you which road not to take, because I have eliminated the long roads. I've eliminated I would say the wrong ones instead, and you are more likely to arrive exactly where I want you to arrive. It is like an example when I'm giving you directions. Well, we are meeting for the first time, or you need to get somewhere and you have no road. Or I think the best thing is we use Google Maps, for example. When you use Google Maps and you want to get to a particular location, you can see the path that will take you to get to that location. However, you also understand that many other paths lead there. So the best thing is to ask Google Map for the shortest route possible. That is the same thing we're trying to do with AI. Now, AI works in the same way, where you need to tell AI what to do, but while telling it what to do, you are giving it has a choice for thousands of possible paths, because it was trained on a lot of information, a lot of record online. So when you tell it to do something, you also need to tell it what it should not do. Because if it decides to take multiple paths, longer paths, it's before it arrives at your answer. Because I want to remind you guys on this again, once again. I remember we said we're trying to make AI less probabilistic and more, we're trying to make AI less probabilistic and more deterministic. When you decide to pull down all those thousands of paths into just a specific one or a specific few, you are forcing the AI into the right path. You are making it know, okay, this is the shortest route possible. I am going to this location and it's just going to take me 3 minutes, rather than me having to go to this location and it's going to take me 15 minutes because I have to go through this, go through that before I get there. So you are basically setting a boundary. And this is how it is. Positive instructions give AI a direction. But negative constraints, when you give it a constraint, it gives AI this sense of clarity. And anytime you're writing a prompt, you need both. But the thing is that most people only use one. Most people often just tell AI what to do, but they don't tell it what not to do. They don't ensure they position it to one thing. And this is what I'm going to say before I go on, which is that no one can use this if you don't understand the concept of what you're trying to do or what you want AI to do in the first place. In our previous classes, I've said it, you need to understand what you're trying to do. You need to be an expert. You need to know the shortest path it will take you to get there, and tell AI to do the same thing. You are trying to let AI do work that you could have done and taking time repeatedly every single time. We are trying to let AI do this at the shortest time possible so you can have, as an human, more time. To do that, you need to be an expert, or you need to have an idea of how to get to the shortest path before you tell AI to get there. AI is not meant to think of the shortest path for us, but we as humans need to understand the shortest path, and from there we let it know what to do by itself. And this is why most people only use the positive instructions, and that is because they don't know what they are trying to build in the first place. They don't know what they are trying to tell AI to do in the first place. So basically, we are telling AI not what to do, right? Every structure I know, when it comes to using these negative constraints, every serious AI needs 3 types of constraints. The first one is they need the vocabulary ban. This is when you decide to kill a word completely and you ensure AI doesn't use those words. And I believe we've done this in day 7. We've done this in day 7 where I mentioned the anti-ban, that is the ban list. where I tell you need to add like a one line to every prompt and tell it never to use, for example, transform, unlock, elevate, foster, seamless, or any version of this word or this sentence. I hope this finds you well. That is the first fence you need to build to ensure AI doesn't go above that fence. The second one is the behavioral ban. This is the actions AI should never take, regardless of what the user says or asks. And an example is never apologize unprompted. Never explain your reason or your reasoning unless maybe asked directly. Never mention you are an AI. I mean, if you are talking to a customer, if you are using AI as a customer support, and you've built this AI to be able to communicate as an human, this AI doesn't necessarily need to tell this customer or this client that they are an AI, but they can tell the client if they want to speak more, you can direct them to someone who has more authority and more knowledge about it. That is better. You are creating trust with your customers. Now, in another case, you can tell AI to never add a conclusion unless, you should not just come up with any conclusion whatsoever. And you should never ask follow-up questions. That's what I have here. And you should give the best answers, with what it has. Basically, you should never add pleasantries. This one is very critical when it comes to building customer-facing systems. Because if your bot apologizes for things it did not do, or over-explains his thinking, or tells a client as an AI give you such response in the middle of a conversation, you can assume you've lost that client's trust in just under a few seconds. So you need to build behavioral bands like this before that happens. If you see this is what ChatGPT and other platforms still do till now. And that's because I can assume they are large language models and they were not built on these constraints. But as a customer facing AI agent that you are building, you need to ensure you had this. Your AI must not or should not bring up things like this. Because once again, you're going to lose the trust of that customer. Because most people nowadays, we understand they don't like AI. They don't like the use of AI. You should not let your customers even know you're using AI, especially if you are doing this very well. Now, the third one is the logic ban. This is the hardest one, actually. And it is the most important one if you want to even build something very serious. This is where you tell the AI what to do when an information is missing, instead of letting me just guess one. An example is if you telling the AI, if the data is not provided in the document, you should not estimate the output as missing data, for example. You understand? Basically, anytime it doesn't get, like for an example now, a customer is asking a question and the next thing they have a particular thing that the AI has no knowledge about. In that case, the AI is not meant to respond. It's meant to just stop immediately. It should stop and forward this to an human agent right immediately. Something like this is needed. There need to be constraints like this. A logic ban helps very well when it comes to customer support systems as well, and even various other systems where you can imagine it in this case, where because the AI at the back end, the API, probably you are using it from Google, Anthropic, and the rest, and you don't give it constraint like this, and it tells the customer that it doesn't have information on that. At that moment, we've created a rift between us and the customers too. Because these customers will know, okay, the best thing this AI could have done at that moment is if it doesn't stop, you should just forward it to an AI to someone with better information about it. That is better. But if it tells the customer that it doesn't have the information directly, we've given that customer a negative view of how to see our business. Another type of constraint we can give when it comes to logic ban is we telling the AI if the budget field is empty, when it comes to payment or anything, you should not proceed. You should just assume something like default budget is wrong. So that means you should not assume that there is a particular price that we've set. You should know that there is no price or there is no budget there yet, so it needs to pass it on to an human agent. That's what I mean there. And we can, in a case where we are getting leads, for example, and for a coach, for example, now we're getting leads, or as a marketing agency, we're getting leads in, and we want to understand the company size of that particular lead, we can give AI a constraint where we say, if the lead's company size is unclear, ask for clarification. Do not infer from the domain name. Where you give constraints like this, like the behavioral ban, the vocabulary ban, and the logic ban, these three, when you give it to every system, it can run without you. So every system that you need to build without you having to input every single time by yourself or watch what it's doing needs these three ban. They need this constraint. There is one I want you to put attention on, which is especially the logic ban. And I will tell you why this matters more than the other two. You might remember from day 2 and day 8, I mentioned working on systems. I was building something for a startup called Reflect Orbiter, right? This orbital mirror, aerospace, and this satellite-based lightning contrast stuff. So in that build, what I was doing there, I was building an AI module that is going to be matching inquiries to specific orbital coordinates. And these technical data, I can imagine something like this should not be done like with approximations. In the aerospace industry, basically, it's very wrong. Because if it's wrong by, let me say, a single decimal point, that can be like a huge difference. This huge difference rather can force a functioning system to fail. So in the mission is meant to take. For an example, if you are building something like this, we need to ensure that the customer's location, for example, is being gotten right. So if I had not considered this logic ban in the first place, you can assume AI most time it might just decide to estimate it. This could work in not just AI, but various other builds that requires calculations, that requires data, that requires mathematical calculation of statistics, basically. So it will have basically looked for an available data somewhere else, and it will sound very confident, like it knows it. And given the coordinates that we probably need, even if it's very close to that, it is what? It's just very wrong. So if you are connecting a system like this to an infrastructure as big as using for startups, it is a huge disaster if you don't use behavioral bands like this. So in this case now, if I wanted to do something like this, I'll have to add a logic ban to protect the integrity of every downstream instruction that the model is fed into. And from that point, the AI is going to stop this approximation or this flagging where it wants to match it with something more valuable. So the AI, rather than filling the gap with a guess, the logic ban is going to basically ensure you enforce it with the correct information. Let me show you how a constraint list changes the output quality with a simple example that you can even replicate after watching this video. So I'm going to use, as usual, we use AI, and this is ChatGPT. As usual, I tell you, I'm not signed in. So what that means, we're getting the purest response from ChatGPT at this moment. So I'm going to use AI to summarize, like, let me say a document, though I don't have a document with me, but I can just, let me tell it to give me a document. I'll have to duplicate this. Okay. For a case study sample. I'm telling you to give me a case study sample. So just giving me something. Okay. He's also using my location as well. This is quite a lot. This is a lot. You can see something as short as this is giving us something as long as this, which I probably don't even need. I didn't ask for something as long as this. But you can see why you need to prompt your AI very well. So, okay, so we have that copied. So we're going to use that for the two builds we're going to make here. So let's tell AI to write a short summary of this business document, and I give it the document, right? So let's see. I tell it to just write a summary for this. Okay, when you look at these outputs, when you see something like this, you just know here's a summary. Okay, it gave us a conclusion, but you notice that this AI basically wrote an essay. Because honestly, it's not wrong. It's not wrong, but to me, this is not useful. This is not useful because every single thing is here. It's just big languages, just trying to overcomplicate issues. Because I have to start thinking of every single thing he's saying here. But I'm going to use a more refined prompt with constraints now. Let's see the difference between these two. I have this prompt here, and I said, summarize this document Okay, let's see. Summarizes documents with negative constraints. Number one, do no introductory sentence. Do not start with here is a summary or any variation. You should not use any bullet points. You should use no word over 3 syllables. You should use just plain languages only. And I told you to not mention the author or company name. You should not mention the author or company name. And you should not use no conclusion sentence and the maximum of 60 word total. That is what we want. Now, when you look at this now, get to see, okay, let's see. When we look at this, we see something dense, direct, and every word here, every single word here ends its place actually. A busy founder is going to read this in like 15 minutes or 15 seconds. A busy founder can read this in 15 seconds and it has exactly all it needs. Now, when you notice this, we are using the same AI, we're using the same document, the same model, and the constraints did not limit the outputs. It's more of a sharpened it. So that is what you're building all these constraints does from the vocabulary constraints, especially the logic constraint as well. You can see what all this has done. These are just what ensure it sharpens it. It doesn't trap the AI. It just points it to one particular direction, what we want. I want to show you why this matters beyond this chat window. When we open make.com tomorrow, one of the first tools that you are going to use that is going to be very crucial for anything we're doing is called a filter actually. And a filter in make.com is a condition that stops AI from moving through, let me widen this, from moving through Bema. All right, ma. A filter in make.com is a condition that stops AI from moving through the system unless it meets specific criteria. An example can be only pass this data if the budget is over $2,000. Or we tell it only continue if the email is not the competitor's domain, or we tell it to stop processing if the name field is empty. Now, things like this, it sounds familiar to you. Yes, that is a logic ban. It's more of a behavioral ban, actually, in visual form, in an automation tool as well. When we're using a filter like this, we have a clear and clean negative constraints that we don't even need to, start explaining, because we just need to pick out the keywords and the things that we want to let it avoid. When a particular sentence or a particular word contains that, it's going to avoid it clearly. So it comes to logic bans like this. If you can't write one clearly today, it's completely natural. But if you can't write one clearly today, I can assume that the automation we're going to build, the automation work is going to feel like guesswork. The brainware I've been building all this while on layer 1, what I've worked on layer 1 all this while, is the logic. Is the logic the same pipe in layer 2, which is automations is going to work on. If we can get the constraints we're going to use right here, the system we build from tomorrow will know when to move and when to stop. So before I let you go, I want you to open the prompts you use the most, the one that you run maybe every single day, or the one that you might have tweaked, might have edited a lot of things like 20 times if possible, and maybe it still does something that annoys you. Here are the 3 things I want you to use so that every single time your AI does only things you want to do. Because I noticed, if you don't add this constraint into it, your AI might start talking too much, and maybe it keeps on using that particular tone you don't like, or maybe it always adds this, this cheesy or this cliche closing line that nobody even asked for in the first place. If you can write those 3 things down, not as a feedback, but as a banned list, you are going to be able to turn every single annoyance, every single thing that you're feeling about, the thing you're facing with your AI at the moment, you're going to turn it to constraints. An example that I can say here now is that you can tell your AI to never write more than 3 sentences unless asked. That was an example of what I showed you using ChatGPT just now. I gave it a constraint here, where I told it clearly that it should write just a maximum of 60 words total. And you can see with everything, it gave us just this. Give us just this. So we can assume using all this thing is going to... So you add those prompts tonight, run it again and see what happens. I just need you to know that if you don't build these constraints, your AI will keep going to different paths every time, every single time. So, one more thing before I go. The concept behind these negative constraints is even older than AI, from what I know. This TED talk that explains it better than, any technical document I might want to send to you guys is by this artist named Phil Hansen. So the talk is about, it's called Embrace the Shake. Now, Phil developed a tumor in his right hand. Was it right hand again? It developed a tumor basically in his hand, and that made it impossible for him to draw the way he used to draw. And a doctor told him to embrace the limitation instead of fighting it. And he did. And when he, what he made inside that constraint was even better than anything he had made before, according to him. So this is about 10 minutes, and I watched this years ago, and it reframed how I thought about, every restriction that I put in my, my builds, any single automation I build. So, and I got to understand that a constraint is not a weakness in a system. It's more like a thing that forces the system to find a right answer, or find the right answer rather, because the wrong answers have been removed. Basically, you've removed what it should avoid. That's the principle basically behind every single negative constraints I've shown you today. So you can watch this video, watch this tonight, and I'm going to probably add this. I'm going to add it somewhere here as usual. So you can just continue from there and you get to understand more on this. So yeah, see you on day 10.